The topic of birth trauma is one very close to my heart. I have a scar on my pubic bone that signifies the arrival of our first daughter. The trauma that I experienced during this birth has led me to become very, very passionate about birth choices. And it's something that I would really love to help other women out there not have to go through the trauma that so many women do suffer in birth, unfortunately. And many of them don't even realise. They go home with a healthy baby, so everyone tells them, well, at least you've got a healthy baby. And of course that's true, and of course that is the most important thing. But still, we can be left battered and bruised and emotionally as well as physically scarred from our birth experience. And this can have a wide-ranging number of consequences, from difficulty feeding our babies, difficulty bonding with our babies. It can lead to issues with relationships with partners, with the whole family. It can lead to issues with self-esteem and body identity. There are so many factors that can be impacted by birth trauma, and yet it's hardly ever spoken about. It's hardly even seen as trauma. Most women, it seems many women at least, are just accepting of the fact that if you have a baby, you're going to be injured in the process. And that is not necessarily the case. And this is why I wanted to create this video on birth trauma. My first birth, as I said, was an elective emergency cesarean. Neither of us were in any danger of death. But it got to the stage where my daughter was 14 days overdue, and I had to make a decision whether to keep going or not. After 8 days labouring, pre-labouring, going in and out of early labour, over-contracting, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in 8 days, and I then succumbed to the very strong encouragement from medical staff at the hospital to have a cesarean, which I did. This birth was in stark contrast to my second birth. My time, that 24 hours on that maternity ward, I felt like I was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It felt like a psychiatric ward, not a maternity ward for me. I'm sure the hospital staff would have said the same about me. I was in such fear because once you're in there, your body is no longer in control. They are in control. You have X amount of hours after your water is broken by them to dilate this much. If not, you're given Syntocin, then you have this much time to dilate. And then, there's what they call a cascade of intervention. Once one thing starts, it just starts steamrolling. And I got to the stage where I actually told medical staff that I felt like I was being shot at, and like a wounded animal was being shot at, because they were just throwing every intervention at me, and I was just wounded. That's how I felt. Also devastating for me was to read my hospital notes later, which said that by one health practitioner that we had done everything on our terms. And I wondered later, who else's terms should things be done when it comes to my body and my baby? Who else should be making decisions but me? But to this healthcare provider, it was maybe unusual or unheard of that someone would come to a hospital equipped and able to make decisions for themselves or negotiate decisions. I importantly want to say that I would do it over and over again, a million times over, to have the presence of my beautiful daughter in my life. There is nothing I wouldn't do to have her in my life. So despite all this trauma, it was the opening to the best part of my life so far. But still, having had my second daughter, I then realised that you can have a healthy baby and an amazing birth. And I so much want all women to have that. If I had a magic wand, I would wave it and ensure every woman had a beautiful birth like I did with my second baby. It was unbelievable. It was quick. It was elating. I felt elation. I felt more present than I'd ever felt in my life. Like I knew everything that was going on, and yet I was in my own little world. I let my mind leave, and my body just took over, and that pure presence, that warrior woman just took over, and I was able to give birth naturally at home, standing up by our fireplace, which was an incredible experience. These are some of the things that I would highly recommend to help you have a birth more like my second rather than my first. First of all, get highly educated about birth, about bodies, about babies, about birth choices, about your choices. And read and read and read. This is so important. And do an excellent birth course, which is very comprehensive and gives you a whole range of tools, because you never know what you're going to need in your birth. I used completely different things in my second birth to what I used in my first. So you need a very, very big toolkit, combination of things like meditation, yoga, visualizations, acupressure, movement, dance, those bouncing balls, all sorts of things. A TENS machine can help. These are all natural methods that can help you. Water, showers, sitting on the toilet. There are all sorts of leaning on a high kitchen bench, I found pushing a pressure point in my third eye there immensely helpful and got me through my second birth. There are so many amazing things you can do. Also in that birth course, make sure they cover what you can do about breached and posterior babies. My first baby was posterior, and I didn't know this for 8 days, and I got to hospital and only found out then. There are ways naturally that you can move posterior and breached babies without surgical intervention. So I urge you to get educated on that and have someone present with you that can help you with that, those natural methods before trying surgical interventions. Also, I highly recommend, if you can, having a month off before birth. I worked right up until birth of my first baby. For many women do it, but for me it wasn't the right decision, and I truly believe I had a fairly stressful type of work, maybe more stressful than many others, mediating conflicts, but I still do think that having that extra time off, it allows your body to start to relax and realize it's time, because ultimately your body is only going to go into labor when you're relaxed. And I was much more relaxed to be able to go into labor more quickly after my due date, and actually birth much more quickly. The other thing is face your demons. They may be from your own life, they may be coming in from other people's stories, they may be from a previous birth, but you need to face your demons, because this is the biggest event of your life. This is a marathon, so physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, you're going to need everything there with you, and you're going to need the most trust and faith you possibly could have in yourself. So face your demons, work them out, do whatever it takes to overcome them. Talking to other women that have had successful, positive, empowering births was one of the most important things I ever did. And it was a real turning point for me, turning fear into hope for an incredible birth. And I really felt I could do it after spending a day with some amazing women who had had home birth, VBACs or vaginal births after cesareans. So that is also a very empowering experience. If you do experience birth trauma, or if you do experience a birth that is not the way that you wanted it, first of all, I would say if you're still in the birthing room, for example, having a cesarean like I had, I was able, my not negotiable was to have my daughter feeding while I was being stitched up. And that was a hugely important step for me and her. We had no trouble bonding or feeding after that, and there are many women who have cesareans that do have trouble bonding and feeding, unfortunately, which is something many people don't talk about unless you do your own research. So thinking about things like that, what are your not negotiables? There are actually some really lovely modern methods of, you can even assist obstetricians deliver your baby, actually hold your baby, take it out of your open wound, your cesarean. You can actually help birth your baby, so you could be one of the first to touch it rather than other people. You don't have to weigh your baby straight away, etc., etc. There are many, many different options. So learn, read, think about what you want, because you can make the best of a difficult, traumatic birth, which is what I did at the time. The other thing I did was get some really top level counselling 5 days after birth, because while I had so much gratitude and love for my little daughter, it was absolutely the best time in my life. I felt so much pain physically because I didn't want to take painkillers because I was breastfeeding, and also emotionally, the devastation. I had thought I'd done everything in my power to have this incredible birth, and it all went wrong. It all went completely differently to what I planned. These tips are so important because I believe there is nothing more important for a woman than having a positive experience of birth and motherhood. And if she can't have that, if there are some limitations in the way, it can seriously have an impact on, wide-reaching consequences, which women might not even make the connections between, maybe a traumatic birth and postnatal depression, traumatic birth and relationship breakdown with your partner. I wish with every ounce of my being a positive birth experience for you. This is such a special time, and it's such an important time. I don't believe there is any more significant time in a woman's life for a woman who is going to have children, other than birthing, becoming a mother, beginning your journey as a parent. It is so important. So get prepared as if this is the most significant event of your life. Don't just leave it in the hands of people on the day in the hospital. Talk to your health providers. Set yourself up for the best possible chance for your best possible birth.